Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the latest rumors around free agent Nazem Kadri and his links to the New York Islanders. So, all the talk this week has been Nazem Kadri to the Islanders. What's going to happen here? What's going on with this? What's going on with that? It's all a bunch of dominoes that need to fall into place for the Islanders to officially sign Nazem Kadri. You guys remember a couple of years ago, it might have been even last year, the New York Islanders had signed four guys in September. Zach Parise, I think Chara, and I think there was two other guys that the Islanders had signed basically right in training camp. And it's like, oh, Chara's at Islanders training camp. Zach Parise is at Islanders training camp. And we still didn't know what their number was. It's all a matter of money. Now, to the people out there that said Nazem Kadri to the Islanders, that's never going to happen. Kind of looks like it's about to happen. Now, again, it's not confirmed that Naz is going to the Islanders. And a lot of you guys, shout out to Shaka, you said this last week, I'd be stoked that Nazem Kadri signs with the Islanders. Yes and no, and I'll get to that at the end because I'm still kind of on the fence about this one. So let's start off with the Islanders situation right now, today, at the making of this video. So it's 10:30 on August 4th, so it's the day before I post this video, and I don't think this is going to change here, but the Islanders' current cap space is $11 million, which is fourth most in the National Hockey League. But they have to re-sign Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows, Noah Dobson, and Alexander Romanov. All three of those guys are restricted free agents right now, and the Islanders have $11 million in cap space. So that's the situation there, and I will get to Wahlstrom in a second. So that's the Islanders situation, okay? You could argue Dobson and Romanov, especially with, I'm looking at the number that we just saw from Mario Ferraro in San Jose. He got $3.25 million on a 4-year deal. I think that Lou is going to try and use that sort of contract with Dobson and Romanov. Mario Ferraro is a very good defenseman in the National Hockey League. He's eventually going to be the captain of the Sharks, I think, in the future. And I think that contract is a very good base to put those two contracts. So let's just add to that. Let's say 3.5 for each of them. Between the two of them together, it costs $7 million for the two of them together. Dobson and Romanov. Perfect. So $7 million per season. So that leaves you about $4 million in cap space. That's not enough to sign Naz. That's not happening. So what's on the table here? So we've been hearing from different people, different things. So from Eyes on Isles, the Eyes on Isles podcast, they're really good. And they were talking about how Josh Bailey is the guy we want to see traded. And I think if you ask 90% of Islanders fans, they will say Josh Bailey is the scapegoat and they would like to get him traded. He has 2 years left on his contract, $5 million per season, so that's $10 million over the next 2 years on Bale's contract. And the Islanders would be getting a pretty good chunk of change saved there, which again, with the $4 million they would have after signing Romanov and Dobson, now you add $5 million to that $4 million, that's $9 million in cap space, which still wouldn't be enough, I don't think, for Nazem Kadri. So we've also heard another report from, that was also from David Pagnotta, saying that Bailey was a guy to look at, but we also saw from the Daily Faceoff, they were talking about how we could see a scenario where Anthony Beauvillier is the foregone conclusion guy to get traded out of Long Island. And that's when you look at his contract, it's similar to Josh Bailey. $4.15 million per season, and again, a 2-year deal, and he walks straight into unrestricted free agency. So both of those guys are going to be UFAs in 2 years from now. So if I'm looking at this from the Islanders, Anthony Beauvillier, 25 years old, and a lower cap hit, I would try my best to keep Beauvillier. Now, the problem is, in a Josh Bailey trade, you might be looking at more of a you're kind of pulling for teeth with a Bailey trade because of his contract situation. So your leverage kind of goes out the window. But Beauvillier, it's still at 25 years old. There is still potential for him to raise his level of game somewhere else. And at this point, he is a middle six forward and not really much more than that. And you could argue that Josh Bailey is kind of similar, except he's making more money and he's older. So it's kind of a hard sell to try and trade Bailey at this point, who's already 32 years old. He'll be 34 at the end of that contract. He might be retiring at that point. So this is one of those situations where you could see a scenario where both of those guys get traded. And if that's the case, maybe there's more to this table than we're talking about. Now, again, this is all stuff we've heard from reports. Now I'm starting to give my little thoughts on this. So if you guys know anything about social media is somewhere you should be checking out for obvious reasons. But another reason is apparently Oliver Wahlstrom changed his bio. Yes, I know this seems like you're going way too into this, but Oliver Wahlstrom changed his status on his bio from, I believe it was something about New York Islanders, to athlete with a hockey stick, which entails, is Oliver Wahlstrom getting traded, or is this just creating more smoke and mirrors? Again, it's just a theory, but these are things that we look at, right? So consider that with a grain of salt. But again, it's also out there. And Oliver Wahlstrom is a year away from restricted free agency next summer. Do the Islanders have the money to invest in him coming off of his entry-level contract at 23 years old next summer? These are things, bits and pieces we have to put together, and I think it's something worth mentioning. They also have to sign Kiefer Bellows, who I think is going to get somewhere between 1 and 1.25, somewhere around there, on an annual contract. So I'm not too worried about Kiefer Bellows here. I'm really not. So, to catch you guys up, I think the Islanders have already signed Romanov and Dobson. I think that's kind of in there. $7 million between the two of them per year on their contracts. Gives the Islanders a little bit of flexibility, but they can trade one of probably Bailey or Anthony Beauvillier, maybe even both, in order to bring in another top six forward via trade. Whether that's a trade with Wahlstrom and Bellows and Beauvillier and Bailey and some kind of form. In return, what are the Islanders getting when they trade Bailey or Beauvillier or Wahlstrom or whoever the guy is, or multiple players? What are they getting in return? Are they getting that top six winger to replace Bailey and Beauvillier and Wahlstrom? Or are they acquiring more draft picks and prospects? Which, God, I hope that's not the case. And I don't think the Islanders see it that way because they are in a cup window. You don't want to be trading for prospects and draft picks. You could do that at the trade deadline next year if the team isn't any good. Why do that now? It's not worth doing that at this point. So that's where the Islanders are at right now. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And I think that Wahlstrom thing kind of twists into this because it's very interesting. I hope it's not true because Wahlstrom is such a good player for the Islanders. And to trade him out is kind of defeating the purpose of what they're trying to do, is trying to create more. They're trying to get more goal scorers on this team. And by trading Wahlstrom, you're trading a guy that can score goals for you and is due for a breakout season next year. I think that would be a crucial mistake by Lou if he did trade out Wahlstrom just to dump the contract of Bailey. It doesn't work. I really hope that's not the case. But this is going to be an interesting saga to keep an eye on because I think Nazem Kadri wants to go to the Islanders. And I mentioned this last year. I said Nazem Kadri is probably going to the Islanders. He has the ties to Lou in Toronto, and we know Lou is good at luring players back to his teams in the future. We've seen that in the past with Lou. It looks like he has struck again with Nazem Kadri. Now, here's the last point I want to mention, and that is, you guys might want to know what are my takes. As an Islander fan, obviously, what are your takes on Nazem Kadri coming to the Islanders? So, there's different ways to approach this. So, the obvious thing is, the perception of the team grows, right? Because if you're able to acquire a big name free agent, that's a huge win for the Islanders. And the identity of the team is, okay, the Islanders can lure in some talent, right? Nazem Kadri is no joke. He was a big fish free agent. The buzz is kind of sort of dried up at this point. What now? It's going to be a month after free agency at this point. But the Islanders acquiring a big name like Kadri does account for something. But here's the downside. And the downside is I look at what he did last year. He put up some record numbers last year in Colorado, which is great, but is that sustainable? Is he going to go back to the numbers of 60 to 70 points per season? Or is he going to be the 99-point player he was last year? Again, it's still kind of hard to tell which one of those guys is he. And I'd like to believe he's that 99-point player every year moving forward. But that's not a guarantee. And realistically, that's not going to be the case. So if the Islanders are paying Nazem Kadri for that 100-point player that he was last year, I am a little bit concerned because it's probably closer to that $10 to $11 million contract per season. But if they're paying him for a fairer value at, say, 8.5 to 9.5 per year, I'm much more comfortable with that, even if it's on a shorter-term contract with the Islanders. I'm okay with that. So I think it is hopefully the latter half, because I think that perceptually for the Islanders would be better. And for Nazem Kadri, he might have to explore the market in another year or two on a shorter-term contract here with the Islanders and see what he's got in the arsenal at that point. I think the Islanders are in a cup window right now, and who knows where they're going to be in 5 years from now. They might be rebuilding at that point. I hate to say that, but for Naz to sign an 8-year deal or 7-year deal with the Islanders, on the back half of that contract, the Islanders might not even be competitive. So does he even want to do that? Right? You're getting the bag, but you're not going to be playing competitive hockey on the back half of that contract. Is it even worth it? Those are some of the things that have to be weighed out. But I think the Islanders are a good destination for Naz. He's that type of player. Lane Lambert, I think, is going to let the team freewheel it a little bit more than they did under Barry Trotz. It's going to be a similar system, but I think a little bit more innovative, I guess is the word. And that's not a shot at Barry Trotz, but that's just the reality of the situation here. And I look at the Islanders today, and I have them making the playoffs next spring, but I still have questions. I still have questions about the depth of the scoring, even with Nazem Kadri, because what's the cost? Is it Bailey and Beauvillier gone? Well, now you need another guy to fill out a spot in your top 6. Is it Wahlstrom? Is it Arno Durando? Is it William Dufour? Like, who comes in, right? The Islanders don't have a ton of prospects. So that's where I have the concern. If you take a bunch of these guys out of the equation, do you have guys to replace them? And those are some of the questions I have. But as of today, Nazem Kadri is on the radar of the Islanders, and it may come at the price. Again, dominoes will have to fall, and that is pun intended. They will have to fall for this to work, because at the current situation, the Islanders are at the risk of having, again, they don't have to necessarily worry about an offer sheet because Dobson and Romanov are exempt from an offer sheet. And I've heard rumors here that Dobson to the Canucks and Barzell to the Canucks and stuff like that for JT Miller. Do not do that. I'm not buying that Kool-Aid. Again, there's maybe something to that. I just don't think that's what's in the best interest of the Islanders. And again, you're looking at JT Miller. Not only are you giving up all those assets, but you're also signing him to that massive contract. You get the payment on the front end with all the assets and the payment on the back end with that massive contract extension. It doesn't make sense. That's where Kadri here, yeah, you might be giving him a high number, which sucks, but at least you're not paying him for the assets that he probably would have costed at the trade deadline as well. So guys, let me know what you think down below. What do you think of the New York Islanders probably getting Nazem Kadri? Again, it's not guaranteed at this point, but I figured I'd mention it because, of course, you guys want my Islanders side of things, and I figured that I'd mention that to you guys. It's the team I know the most about, and I figured I had to put my input into this one. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.